summary of the data and the summary of the analysis have been on our website since that time. The raw data for publication purposes, no researcher likes to divulge that information and send it out. Since we are collaborating in this with WCS and Dr. Beckman, the raw data, we have to be very careful. The summary of the data, the summary of the analysis have been on the website for several months. The other thing I want to point out here is John Beckman, Dr. Joel Berger, and Jim Settinger, all internationally recognized experts in their field, have all been associated with this project, this study, for various periods. John Beckman throughout the period, Joel in the beginning, Jim at the end. And I think that if there's a problem with this study or with our conclusions, these guys would have noted. Okay, an example of the data. As I mentioned before, we have 517 samples on bears, on unmarked bears. Well, that's to date. When we look at the information for which this analysis was based, it went up through 2008, 97 through 2008. 420 bears, total of 709 occurrences in the database. Now, there's an example of what the raw data that we gave No Bear Hunt Nevada. It has the original capture date for that bear identified there as 20 green right, meaning a green ear tag in the right ear, number 20 on it. Tattoo tag, collar number. The age when we first captured her, she was 7, she was a female, 160 pounds, where we caught her, and then subsequent captures in July of 2000, in September of 2000, in August of 01, and then recorded mortality on her in June of 07 over on the California side. So that's an example of all the information that we have, all the data. Now, that might not look like much to somebody that's not a scientist, but that is a capture history. That's a ton of information right there. Okay, now program mark was used to calculate, or it can be used to calculate a variety of parameters. Capture probabilities, all those things that I just mentioned a couple of slides ago. Rate of population increase being one of them. The Jolly-Sieber model structure, that method in program mark was used to calculate population size. And basically what you do is you look at the number of bears captured and marked in one period, compare that to the number of new bears unmarked in subsequent periods with the number of recaptures in the subsequent periods. It's a mathematical model and it's way beyond me. The population increase, the lambda, that was derived from the cradle model structure in program mark. This gave us our estimates of survival, per capita recruitment, and lambda. Now, if recruitment, meaning the number of new bears coming into the system, whether it be by immigration or juvenile recruitment from production in Nevada, either way, if recruitment exceeds mortality rates, then your lambda is going to be greater than 1.0. Our analysis, we have a lambda of 0.21 for males, 0.12 for females. It's both segments, both sex cohorts in that population were increasing. Okay, now this is just an example of what the model looks like in program mark. On the left-hand side, you have a series of bears. There's 8 or 9 different bears there. The date that they were first captured, the month from the beginning, the month that they first appeared in the population, or first appeared in the capture history from the beginning. So the first one there would be month 14. Okay, the sex of the bears, and then as you go through there, we had 138 capture periods that we started with in the model. We collapsed those into 44 based on the seasons, basically the equinox, the solstices, fall, winter, spring, and summer for each year. That gave us 44 capture periods for the entire study area. Every time a bear had an occurrence or an encounter during that study, it received a 1 in that column. Every time that they were not captured during that 3-month period, they received a 0. Right, you look at that, those 1s and 0s, and that's how you derive all the estimates that Settinger came up with. Now, again, that super complicated math is way beyond me. That's the gist of it. Okay, we've heard a lot of the scrutinization is centered around the 16% annual increase. If population is increasing 16%, well, people do the math. Okay, if we started with 200 back here in 2002 or 1990, then we should have 1,500 bears by now or something along those lines. So why isn't that the case? Well, the lambda, the rate of population increase, is the sum of survival estimates and recruitment rates for males and females. Survival, both our males and females, and then adult population has a survival rate of about 0.88. You add recruitment to that for each sex cohort, you come up with the lambda for each sex. We average that together at 16%. Now, the thing to remember about lambda is it's not a constant. Lambda varies. We're not saying that they increase by 16% every single year. We said from the beginning that that's an average annual increase over the course of the study. Okay? It really depends on your starting base, the population from year to year. Kind of think of it as your stock exchange. If you lose 20% one year, if you make 20% the next year, you're not going to be back up to where you were because the base is lower. It's been reduced. And that's what happens with this. And of course, our estimates all depend on how accurate the original 1990 estimate was. Well, Goodrich's population estimate, we took that, and we started at 180, kind of the lower end of his population estimate, and just trying to be conservative. This graph represents 100 simulations of population change over time. We started with a mean lambda of 1.16, which is what we came up with in our analysis. Standard deviation of 0.4. Base population of 180. And 100 random, using random variation during the process, 100 simulations. The red line, which is in between the two yellow lines, which is kind of hard to see, but the red line represents the median of all those simulations, ended up at 374 bears after a 10-year period. Right where we're saying we're at. The yellow lines represent the quartiles, the first and third quarter quartiles, which are basically saying that 25% of all simulations fall above it, 25% of all simulations fall below that bottom line. Pretty telling. Okay, how accurate are the results? Well, there's always uncertainty when you're doing science. That's a given. Okay, but when you increase sample sizes, increase long-term studies, you decrease the uncertainty. Now, these models, program mark for starters, are inherently conservative due to the heterogeneity in capture probabilities, meaning not all bears have equal chances of being captured, depending on a lot of things. We've built some conservatism into the analysis on top of the model. Of those 420 bears that we had in the sample, we removed well over half of them because they didn't fit certain criteria that we were plugging into the model. For starters, a lot of them were dead on their first encounter. Bears coming in, unmarked bears that were hit by cars or that we had to put down, no chance of marking them and releasing them. The other group that we had to remove, I think there were 60 some odd of these, were dependent cubs that we never saw again, never had another encounter. They were dependent when we caught them, dependent on mom, so we took them out. The other thing noted in this model, that I should note, is that all the mortality that occurs, average of 23 bears per year in Nevada, that mortality, anthropogenic mortality, I should say, is already accounted for in the model. And the estimates, all those estimates, as I said before, are based on our study size. They don't include those, the population estimate of 253 was as of 2008, and it was just for those areas that are highlighted in red. We caught a couple bears in those southern areas, but proportionately, they weren't represented. Okay, we're going to dive into the past studies. This is Goodrich's population estimate with the confidence intervals. Okay, now he based his. It's important to realize that he did not come up with a population estimate during his study. He came up with density estimates. Okay, density estimates. Beckman in his 2002 paper extrapolated those density estimates over what he felt was bear habitat in Nevada, which can be pretty objective, and extrapolated that out to get bear population estimate anywhere from 150 to 290 with a mean of about 220. A summary of Goodrich's data set. Okay, for starters, back in 1988 when he began this, or 87, they were under the assumption that Nevada had two bear populations, both small. They occupied the Sweetwaters and a little tiny area in the Carson. We now know, of course, that that's not the case, but that's the idea that they were working on back then. He had two capture periods. One, a 2-month period in 87. Second one was the following year, a 1-month-long capture period. Captured a total of 30 bears that entire study. Density estimates he based on the Lincoln Index using minimum convex polygons, and again, he came up with 20 to 40 bears per 100 square kilometers. That should be 100 there, sorry. In two relatively small areas. He never came up with a population estimate for Nevada. He came up with one for the Carson Range in Little Valley. He estimated there would be about 24 bears in that area. He couldn't come up with a population estimate down in the Sweetwaters because he was never able to recapture any of his mock bears. The important point here, though, is that it was an extrapolated estimate. Now you go to 2002 in Beckman. This is the first rigorous study using marked, recaptured animals for a population estimate. Use program mark. Relatively small sample size compared to what we're dealing with today. But his population estimate of about 180 bears with some very high confidence intervals. Okay, here's a summary of that data. 97, the data was collected 97 through June of 2001. 4 years compared to Goodrich's 3 months. Sample size of 99 bears, 3 times the size of Goodrich's. Density estimates. Now, we'll explain in a little bit, or John can explain later, the difference in the low estimate, 3.2, that was in some of the wild areas that we captured back in the Little Valley, and the 120 bears, which I've already mentioned, is in the urban areas. Population estimate of 180 using program mark. Now, the reason, and this has come up a lot, well, can you imagine if we had said back in 2002 that the bear population was increasing based on this right here? If you notice, the confidence intervals for Goodrich's estimate fall within the confidence intervals for Beckman, for that 2002 estimate. It was impossible to say, at least statistically, that the population had done anything. So we had to conclude that it was stable. If we had said back then, based on that right there, that the population, we thought the population may be increasing due to some other factors, complaints and other things. I mean, look at the scrutinization that we're getting now when we have really good data. Imagine trying to say that back then. It would have hung me. We could not conclude it. Okay, we could not conclude it. We had to conclude that the population was stable. Okay, now coming to date to this latest estimate, the 2008 estimate. This is the second rigorous population estimate based on mark recapture. Summary of our data, July 97 to the end of November 2008, basically 12 years. Sample size of 420 bears. Even when you truncate that down to the 197 that we used in the analysis, it's still twice what the 2002 estimate was. We didn't calculate density in this latest one because we have a population estimate. It's much more telling. Okay. Now, when you have, as I said before, increased sample sizes over a longer period of time, your uncertainty in those numbers decreases. Your confidence intervals decrease. That's why you see such small confidence intervals on this latest study. Now, it's been said, quote, throwing statistics aside from the 2011 paper, yada, 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 this person was basically wanting to look at just the 1990 estimate and the 2002 estimate. Why in the world would you want to throw the best statistics we have aside? Why would you want to just go back to 20 years ago and look at data that's 20 years old when you have current data with very, very tight confidence intervals? Okay, population estimates, just a quick summary. The two estimates between Beckman in 2002 and Goodrich's estimate in 1990, you can't compare those estimates statistically. For starters, two different methods. And Goodrich, again, did not come up with an estimate. That was an extrapolation on Beckman's part using John Goodrich's density estimates. And an increase in sample sizes produces increased accuracy and more precise estimates, as I've already said. Okay, now there's been a lot, I guess a lot of people feel that our estimates and the numbers that we've come up with aren't valid because they haven't been published. Well, anybody that's published in a peer-reviewed publication knows that it's a long process. And I've been busy. I've been kind of busy putting out other fires recently. Haven't had a chance to really work on this particular paper. It is in draft form, and it will be hopefully submitted sometime this fall, which means it could be published as early as next year. But just be it known, we are working on it. Okay, now if all those estimates and the analysis isn't proof enough that the population is increasing, there are some other indices that I want to point out. One is our complaints. When you look at complaints since 1987, this is on a 5-year basis. When you look at it from year to year, there's fluctuations depending on habitat conditions and host other things. When you group it in 5-year segments, 87, 91, all the way up to 2010, it's a steady increase in complaints. And you'll note that I even took out 2007. If I put 2007 in here, that green bar would be off the charts. We took it out because it was an anomaly. It's not a normal year. Other indices of population. Population expansion, sightings in historic habitat. I don't imagine that looks like bear habitat to anybody, except maybe a Nevada researcher. Well, all those little, this may be kind of hard to see, but all those little black triangles represent about the last 20 years all the confirmed bear sightings or bear tracks that we've had in other parts of Nevada. I'll point to some of them. Jarbidge, up here in the Bull Run Mountains, Via Rim. Let me point out something real quick, too, here. This map, everything, all this kind of crosshatch stuff here is historic bear habitat in Nevada, based on historical records. And this is going to be part of that publication that we're working on. Historic habitat in Nevada. This stuff down here that's double crosshatch is the current range in Nevada. When you look at all these sightings, there's some over here, down by Tonopah, Golden Hill, etc. Those are all confirmed sightings of bears in historic range. And when we were able to capture these bears, most of them have been young adult or young dispersal age males, which is a good indication of population expansion. And whether that be from our population moving clear across the state or from associated populations moving in, which we might guess, it's hard to say. Mortality rates since 1997, 316 documented mortalities, all from anthropogenic causes, or almost all from man-caused reasons. I think there was 5 unknown reasons. Look at 2007, we had 63 more mortalities in Nevada in that 1 year, average of 23 annually, and yet the population continues to increase. Another good indication. This is Nevada's population estimate with the little white diamonds representing the years where we actually had population estimates, 1990, 2002, and 2010, 2008, sorry. In the years in between, I left it right at 200, just for the sake of making the graph. You compare that to California's population estimate. This is a published graph on their website. Their population from 1990 to 2008, which is basically from when Goodrich started his study to now. The estimated population increase in California has gone up 62%. And you compare that And you compare the California estimate to just our last few years. When we said we can document a 16% increase annually from 2002, or I'm sorry, from 1996 to 2008, that same period of time, look at California's estimate, went up 15.7%. Now, it's not a statistical estimate of land, obviously, but the comparison is very telling. Okay, when you take all those things combined, especially with the research we've done, more bears getting hit, more bears causing nuisance problem, more bears showing up in odd areas, and more bears on the other side of the state line. Is there another explanation? I'd argue that there probably isn't. We have more bears. I've been asked too about movement back and forth from Nevada to California. A lot of our tag bears over the years have shown up in various places, including California. Some California bears have shown up in Nevada, some of their tag bears. Now, they only started tagging bears recently, just recently. I mean, they've done research in the past. But for all intents and purposes, the bears that could be followed into Nevada have just been marked in the last few years. We have received some of those, mainly over out by Verdi, orphan cub, and things like that. Some of our tag bears, all the way from Lone Pine, California to Lakeview, Oregon. Now that, if you can see this, okay, here's, you're basically your Sierra Nevada population of bears, Tahoe right there. We've had several bears in the Tahoe area get killed on the California side. We've had 2 bears show up clear over in the Sacramento Valley. One 60 miles west of Truckee, which is basically Auburn, Lincoln, in that area. One was, I think they were both killed by California hunters. One clear up here by Aden, California, the one up by Oregon, one, or in Oregon, and the one down here by Lone Pine. They're pretty interesting information. Other good indication. This is just GPS location data from about 12 marked bears. You can see that several of them, though, spend some time on the California side of Tahoe, some going over into here. You'll also notice that some of these spend some time here as well as over in there. I've got another slide that shows that even better. The other good thing here, or the other thing I want to mention here that's pretty telling, some good information. Okay, these are Nevada hunt units, bear hunt units on the Nevada side, all right? These, now they don't break them down by bear units or exact location killed. These are the number of bears killed in each of those counties that border our hunt units in just the last 5 years. Almost 1,200 bears killed right there in the last 5 years. As you've already seen, some of our bears spend time in all these counties. Just, again, it's anecdotal information, and there's immigration and immigration going on. It's pretty good evidence. The other thing we should mention here is that California, down here east of 395 in Mono County, basically the Sweetwater Mountains, they started hunting bears back in, I guess, 05 or 06 due to an increase in the population. Real quick on how we came up with our sustained yield, or our quota estimates. Okay? Rate of population increase 16%. When you look at roughly 250 bears, again, this is for the study area, that'd be about 40 bears per year, sustained yield. 40 bears would be taken out of the population. We cut that in half for setting the quota. We set it at 20. 6 females, which is about 30% of that total harvest. 6 females, though, again, is about 50% of the female lambing. We took those numbers, 20 bears. How many tags is it going to take to kill 20 bears? Well, we used Utah's success rate of 44%. The highest success rate in all western states that we can find. They have baiting in Utah, we don't. I don't anticipate that success rate at all. But we use that to establish our quotas. Again, very, very conservative. I want to reiterate, the population estimate is conservative based on all those things that I've already mentioned. The quota is very conservative. It's half of sustained yield. Okay? That mechanism cutting that quota in half, the sustained yield, that built-in mechanism allows, if it should occur, a number of bears to be taken out of the system, whether they sport harvest or anything else, every year, and that population, again, will regrow the following year. But that loss will be realized within 1 year. If that makes sense. Now, the population is going to continue to be monitored. And that involves analyzing a lot of the data. What we plan to do is analyze it on a 3-year basis, basically a 3-year running average. When you look at things like female hunting mortality, you want that to average out less than 40%. When you're looking at and again, we're looking at trends, a trend in decrease in the age class. Anything, we start seeing a lot of bears less than 4 years old, that's telling you, hey, maybe you got to cut back on the quota. And of course, if hunting mortality exceeds sustained yield estimates for several years in a row. So, can we hunt bears? Can we hunt them legally, safely, sustainably? Yes, we can. I think that's a given. Should we hunt bears? The conservation of the species, the funding, etc. Well, this goes clear back to the public trust doctrine. And I think that the points to remember here is that public trust, and this thing was established over 150 years ago, wildlife resources are not necessarily owned by the public. They're owned by no one. They're held in trust for the public by the legislative body, by you guys. Theodore Roosevelt advocated that hunters, well actually, hunters were the ones that started the public trust doctrine. In that case, Martin versus Waddell, they were the ones that pushed for public trust and the elimination of all these things, elimination of markets for game, allocation of wildlife by law, and the killing of wildlife for only legitimate purposes, which we've already established in RS is acceptable. Theodore Roosevelt also advocated for the role of science as the proper tool for discharge of wildlife policy, rather than popular vote. 1930 American Game Policy Act affirmed this. Wildlife Society has even affirmed this. Implementation of these principles has led to increased professional management of hunting programs. Now, the public trust doctrine is, of course, the bedrock foundation for the North American model of wildlife conservation. Arguably, by far, the most successful model of conservation of wildlife in the entire world. But as Mahoney in 2007 notes, the doctrine and the model are under siege, and they're in danger because of the different reasons he gives there: privatization of wildlife, game farms, and the animal rights movement. And again, the Wildlife Society advocates this, and their position statement on the North American model states that hunting has become central to the success of the model. It's part of the foundation. Okay, the questions come up also. How is killing a bear a conservation of the species? Well, Garcelis, 2002, states clearly, he looked at bear species all over the world, including American black bear. I'll leave this on here just for a second so you guys can read it. But basically, when you hunt a species, you're employing clientele in the conservation of that species that have a vested interest in it. Look at all your species of success in North America over the last 100 years: white-tailed deer, Canadian geese, all those species. And bear populations, it notes, that are managed for sustained harvest do far better in the long run than populations that aren't. Mainly because the protection that's offered with the sustained harvest, with the managed hunt, controls illicit hunting better than not doing so. Funding sources. Okay, we're not doing the hunt because of funding sources, but I will point out a few things here. In 2011, Nevada Bear Hunt grows, or it has the potential to bring in over $93,000 just this very first year. $23,000 in application tag and license fees, $69,000, almost $70,000 in matching PR funds. look at the economic impact of hunting to the state of Nevada, $145 million annually. Now, that is just off the above-mentioned license and tag fees and things like that, money that hunters spend in this state. In addition to that, you have money raised by sportsmen's groups. And this is just a quick example. NBU funds roughly $500,000 every year for youth programs, endow programs, trap and transplant, habitat improvement projects, and research. You're not going to find that anywhere else. Nevada bear hunters. Some of the successful bear tag hunters this year in Nevada, I called them, I asked them, just point blank, how much money do you think you spent in addition to the tags and tag licensing this year on your hunt? And they ranged anywhere from $2,800 to over $8,600 on hotel, food, equipment, etc., tax-free fees. This is money going back into Nevada's economy. The other thing that's come up is the effect on the bear-human conflicts. And I've stated numerous times over the past year that the killing of nuisance bears is not going to solve conflict issue on a permanent basis. People hear what they want to hear, but I've said this before. It's not going to solve it on a permanent basis. Okay? Only effective ordinances, a state law, something along those lines is going to have that effect. But can the killing of bears, can the killing of these nuisance bears affect site-specific problems? Well, obviously, yes. Why else would we go out and kill, like as of last year, 20 different bears for causing nuisance problems? It was to control site-specific areas. Now, I've seen the argument that hunting does not affect the conflict situation. And this is the paper that I've seen cited by TAS, who was Department of Chemistry at Rutgers University in New Jersey, Department of Chemistry. TAS 2005. Now, I've got several issues with this paper. One, he compared complaints in Nevada from a published graph in our status report for a one-year period, from 2002 to 2003. And that's it. That's the only year he looked at. He ignored the previous years' data, 10 years plus of data. He ignored other possible factors rather than just, he concluded that, well, because the complaints dropped from 154 complaints in 2002 to 110 in 2003, that it must be because of our aversive conditioning program, non-violent program. He ignored all these other possibilities. Based his conclusions on the wrong information as well. In his paper, he stated that we started our aversive conditioning program as a non-violent approach in 2002. No, we started it quite back in 1997. By 2002, it was well on its way. And additionally, in 2001, Douglas County passed their ordinance, first county in Nevada to do so. That could have had a large part to do with that drop, but more than likely, it was climatic conditions. As you can see, even when you look again at those 5-year averages, it continued to increase. So I have no faith. If he got our data wrong by that much, I really have no faith in the rest of the paper. And you can compare that to Trezell et al. All right? They looked at a 10-year data set in Wisconsin. Okay? They concluded that when they looked at bear hunting and bear conflicts on a statewide basis, there was no correlation. Hunting did not drop the number of nuisance complaints. But when they looked at it on a bear hunt zone type of unit, a smaller scale, there was a correlation between hunting and complaints. And they concluded that there was no clear evidence, though, that hunting reduced complaints. But they felt that it was probably because hunting was not effectively designed for that goal. The other thing I'll mention is that the previous paper was in a report to a New Jersey commission. As far as I know, it was not peer-reviewed, let alone in a scientific paper. This one was peer-reviewed, and it was published in Ursus. Peer-reviewed by, nonetheless, bear biologists. Okay, are conflict bears susceptible to hunting pressure? Okay, it's kind of hard to see, but look at all the green dots for that bear. This is off GPS collar data. That guy has gone clear over to Incline Village, clear down to Glenbrook in that area, Marlette Lake, spent a lot of time in the higher elevations of the Carson Range. Same bear in that year and a half period that he was collared was clear over in the Pine Nuts, along with several points in between. This is the bear, you guys remember, that we darted and captured on the front steps of the Capitol several years ago. This is him. He made several ventures through Carson City, never got caught, except for a couple of times. But would a bear like that, a big healthy adult male, making those kind of movements from urban areas to wildland areas, be susceptible to a hunt? You bet. And if a hunter was to have taken that bear, would that reduce at least part of the conflicts over here? I'd say yeah, probably would. Another example. This is an example of a management killed bear that we had to kill last year, clear up at Hope. This guy had been all the way from Fallen Leaf Lake, breaking into cars, breaking into homes, clear down to Washoe Valley, Franktown Road, killing sheep, breaking into homes. He hit the west side of Carson City. Excuse me, the reason I know this is because he was jet black, he was huge, and he had a collar on. He was the only black colored bear that I had a collar on. Reports on him all over the place. Again, I mentioned the 20 bears killed last year for conflict reasons in 2010. I looked at that, at last year's data, where I had to kill those bears. 11 of them could have been hunted pretty easy. 11 of the 20. Basically on the periphery of urban areas. Arizona, they have a hunt specifically designed for conflict bears. It's an archery-only hunt in Arizona to take out conflict bears. Florida is doing a current study. The results aren't out yet, but they are preliminary results show that conflict bears are susceptible to hunting pressure down there. Good indication. And again, management kills. When you look at the number of bears killed in Nevada over the last 15 years, 91 by management reasons, 147 hit by cars. Now, is hunting the end of it? No. Just because we've initiated a hunt doesn't mean we're going to quit doing all these other things. We're going to continue with the diversive conditioning and the on-site releases. We've been doing it all summer. We're going to continue with the Correllian Bear Dog program. These guys are a tool that I really can't do without. We're going to continue rehabbing orphan bear cubs, taking them down on the lark and releasing those bears. They're actually pursuing funding to collar those orphan bears when we release them. And we're going to continue with bear research. Right now, John and I are working with 2 or 3 different people. Last year or so, we've been working with a lady getting her master's at the University of Tennessee, looking at stable isotope analysis and correlating our population with another population, investigating such things as when do these bears start taking advantage of human food because they're a certain age class, etc. And we're also working with a PhD student now out of Columbia University. We're going to be doing some resource selection, function modeling, circuit theories, and things like that. Okay, and again, should wildlife policy be made by popular vote? Well, as Minnis in 1998 argues that when it's not done by science, when it's done by popular vote, you're taking those decisions out of the hands of the people that have a vested interest in the issue. People that have a vested interest and in some cases have any interest at all. Some people don't. By and large, public at large supports hunting. We know that because hunting is allowed in every state of the union. Bears are hunted in every state in the West, now including Nevada. The legislature has deemed that hunting is supported and a valuable activity. Black bear by law are considered big game and thus available to be part of the hunting program that we've been participating in for decades. The data that we collect from these bears, already I've got genetic material on bears that were taken during the hunt so far. I've got more genetic material on certain areas of Nevada than I was able to get for the last 10 years. mainly because I don't have time to go out and capture bears and look at some of these areas where these guys are hunting. Are they hunting in the Tahoe Basin? No, not really. 7 of the 8 bears were taken out of the basin and other mountain ranges. So the data that we collect, I think, is very, very important. Can we hunt bears? Yes, we can. Should we hunt bears? For all those various reasons. Well, that's not my decision. That's your guys' decision. With that, take questions. John, are you still with us?
I am.
Okay.
Thank you, Carl. That was an outstanding presentation. Mr. Director, how do you want to do this? Do you want us to ask questions of Carl now, or do you want to move to Maureen and have her do her presentation?
My thought is that since it's fresh in people's minds, it might be a good idea to ask questions now, and then Dr. Beckman's on the phone if you have specifically about his work.
Okay.
That we can move to Maureen.
Okay, then why don't I bring back to the Commission for questions for either Carl Lackey about bear biologist or Dr. Beckman. Commissioner Drew.
Thank you, Chairman. Carl, one question, just because it's on our action item tomorrow. Is there anything, and maybe John on the phone would like to chime in on this as well, but is there anything that you've observed so far in this season that would result in you requesting us to cancel the current season that's going on?
No, not at all. Actually, probably just the opposite. I mean, we've been surprised at the number of hunters that have gone out in areas like the pine nuts, the pine groves, the sweet waters, and that's where they're actually taking these bears. And ironically, none of those bears have been marked by me. I think it's important to note too that people under the assumption that I have every problem bear out there marked. Obviously not the case. A couple of those bears, I think, are pretty obviously garbage bears. Nonetheless, none of them were marked, and I think it's anecdotal, but it's pretty telling evidence that there are more bears out there than we even think.
Just one other question, and that was, what's generally your age structure of the bears that you've seen so far?
I gave you guys this thing. We should have a copy of that. Average data, I don't know, but when you look at, I'll just read them real quick. 9-year-old female, 10-year-old female, 8-year-old male, 7-year-old male, 4-year-old male, 4-year-old male, 14-year-old male, and an 8-year-old female. So all adults. There was one of those 4-year-old females. Could have been 3, could have been 4. And this is all estimated ages. Obviously, we pulled these from the Center for Info Analysis, but all adults so far, which is a good indication that at least the age cohorts are well distributed.
And the last part is just a statement. I'd like to compliment Dr. Beckman and Carl for their continued efforts. Regardless of the decision we have tomorrow, I mean, it's pretty impressive the amount of data that you guys have put together, and it's easy to see your passion for this issue. So we sure appreciate all your work.
Commissioner Strong.
Mr. Lackey, I received some information yesterday afternoon. It was given to me. This is from the Gardnerville Record Courier dated Friday, October 19th, 2007. And it seems back along about 1948, the Nevada and California wildlife people got together on Hawthorne, decided that they would go ahead and take the nuisance bears from Yosemite and go ahead and dump them in the Lake Tahoe area. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with
about 10 years, they took 30 to 40 bears a year from Yosemite, the nuisance bears, and went ahead and dumped them up there. Prior to that, Tahoe didn't have black bear. Now, I'd say this is just an article I was given. I thought I'd run that by you and see what you have to say. According to this, supposedly, that if you use all the numbers and everything, there's supposed to be about 1,800 bears here.
Okay, well, for starters, I've heard the rumor that Yosemite brings their problem bears up here. I've read articles. That rumor's been floating around for 40 plus years. It's just a rumor. When you talk to guys from California, they dismiss it as quickly as we do. Same rumors that we would take bears from Tahoe, and habitually place them over in the pine nuts or elsewhere in Nevada. Now, prior to my taking this position, there were a few bears relocated by such means by the previous biologists, but not as a rule. I mean, we definitely haven't done it as a rule since '97. And like I said, that's a rumor that's been out there for a lot of years.
Well, supposedly there was a meeting over in Hawthorne that these people attended.
I don't know what they're talking about.
Well, it's for your time.
No, I have no idea what they're talking about.
Commissioner Howell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Carl, last year, you made a statement that I'd like to refresh for the record. You stated that the sows with cubs usually came out of the dens mid-April.
Usually a little bit later, yeah.
A little bit later than mid-April?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere from mid-April to mid-May.
Okay. I just wanted that to go back on the record fresh. Thank you.
Commissioner Rain.
Thanks, Jim. Question for you is, how many marked bears do you have? Marked, your marked, collared, any pet marks? What do you got?
Well, we've marked 310 or whatever.
So how many of those would you think are still out there in the field now? Half of them, most of them, be wild guess?
Well, I've documented, we've came across roughly a third of those bears again, whether it be just recapture or death or whatever. How many of those bears have died, I'd have to go through the analysis and look, but impossible to say.
And so two things kind of following up on that is, one is I see none of the bears that have been harvested were marked, and if you could speculate upon what that might mean, and then, or you might need a larger sample size in order to come up with what sample size would you need to be statistically relevant in that category to make that mean something?
Well, I think when you look at the number of bears that are recaptured every year, again, I've recaptured about 35, 36% of the bears over the years. I guess anecdotally, that would tell you that roughly 36% of the bears out there have marks. If you just look at them randomly, that's not statistically relevant by any means. 8 bears killed so far, none of them marked. Based on those figures, I'd say if we hit the quota of 20, we may see a handful that are marked. I mean, you'd think it'd be 30%, but I don't think it's going to reach that. I think that's a good indication again that more bark bears out there than we think.
So how would these numbers from the harvested bears, how will they be utilized in future research analysis? Kind of go over that, how these numbers could be utilized for statistics?
Well, it'll help us monitor the population in addition to the research that we're doing. When you're looking at, right now, we, John and I know real well about our age structure, our sex cohorts in the study area, primarily in these urban areas where we capture bears. This kind of gives us a little window into what may be going on out there in these backcountry areas. In addition to the 2 research studies that I've mentioned that we've been doing, we're also, for the last 2 years, we've been looking at reproductive success in these backcountry areas, going into female dens that are wild bears and looking for success. So, tie all that together, and it'll be good information to be analyzed somewhere down the road.
Okay, I have a question. One of the biggest things I'm trying to get my hands around is the fact that we are only counting our Nevada bears that are on the Nevada side of the line. And when I think about a decision that needs to be made about a population of bears, I struggle with the idea of having some arbitrary line be a demarcation point and a decision that needs to be made. Now, I absolutely understand why we need to count Nevada bears, but I guess when you look at the population, in my mind, I'm thinking that the relevant population for determining, making a determination of whether the natural resource, the bear resource, could in any way be harmed by a hunt, has to be something that is either relevant to geography or the biology of bears and their range, from the state of Nevada, or something. I don't think it's the entire Sierra Nevada range. But it seems to me that there's a population, a relevant population, that we should probably be zeroing in on that is much larger than the 300 to 400 bears that we're looking at that are on the state line. Now, I mean, I realize we need to understand what that number is for purposes of allocating tags or just for making a tag decision. But from the standpoint of determining if there should be any negative impact on this bear resource that is obviously going across state lines, do we have any idea what numbers we're talking about? Because I've looked at the data of the number of bears that are being taken and harvested in the counties that surround Lake Tahoe on the California side. But are there population estimates, and do you have any sense of what that number is? Because it just seems to me to be a much, much bigger number.
Well, the numbers are pretty arbitrary. When you look at California estimates that their Sierra Nevada subpopulation that they have outlined in their DD is roughly 10,000, a certain percentage of their entire state population. 10,000 animals in that Sierra Nevada population, which, based on our tag data, our bears are part of that population, or at least have emigrated to up and down that range. If you're looking at the population estimate of, let's say, the Tahoe Basin, the numbers really vary. I keep forgetting to mention the studies that we're involved in, but right now we've collected hair samples since '98. California is currently this year collecting hair samples off all their hunter harvested bears, at least in those counties that I outlined. And what we hope to look at there is the genetic relationship, north and south in that range, and east and west, and into Nevada, immigration in Nevada. It's important to realize that the Nevada bears, per se, are, if we take that political boundary away, they're not Nevada bears. They're simply bears that were on that side of the political boundary when we happened to catch them. They go back and forth. We have data to prove that. There are some bears that go back and forth, I should say. Some, I would imagine, spend their entire lives in Nevada. What the relationship is and how much immigration we have coming from California, we can't say with any certainty right now, but that's why we're looking at this the genetic analysis coming up. And that'll answer some of those questions.
So the obvious point that I would make then is that determination has already been made that population is huntable because California's already doing it. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, and I would say rather than just look at Nevada, it's Nevada's portion of the population, but since California already hunts those exact same bears, obviously, because some of our tag bears have gotten killed over there, consider 20 to be our proportion of their quota. We look at it that way too.
And I have a question, and I have to apologize. I was dealing with an emergent matter, and I may have missed in parts of the presentation. When we came back to do the permit regulation, and I started seeing a substantial increase in the attention to the science aspects of this hunt, especially from the No Bear Hunt Nevada. They basically were digging in, and they were really trying to get their hands around the science, and that's a good thing. That's exactly what we should be doing. I did the same thing. I am not by any means a scientist, but I wanted to understand more. And when I was looking at this issue of this political boundary and what is our population, that naturally made me say, well, what is the state of California doing? And I jumped on their website, and I found their bear management plan, and I was looking at some other issues and actually stumbled across some information that was in their 2004. I guess it's DED, which is it's basically like an EIS.
Draft environmental.
Yeah, draft environmental document. So they basically do like an EA every single year, to document the basis for their management decision from a hunt. And so, in going back to that 2004 document, noted that for the first time they were opening up the units on the Nevada border. So in 2004 was the very first time they were opening up those units at border, and it's basically those regions that are south of Tahoe. all along the Nevada border. And so obviously the assumption that I made is that, wow, they've got a increasing population, and that got me into their population estimates and their graphs and the number of bears that are basically increasing in the state of California, and especially along that the Nevada-California line. And I also note that the way they hunt their bears there is that they give out unlimited tags. Anybody gets a tag over the counter, and then what they do is they put a 1,700 bear cap on that total harvest. Cal Fish and Game, I believe, for the last 3 years have tried to bumping that cap up to 2,000, and the commission has decided not to do that for those 3 years. But obviously, the biologists at Cal Fish and Game think that the population is growing and can handle that additional harvest. And it just seems to me to be very powerful, what I would call circumstantial support, for the fact that our population is increasing. And I believe that you came up with a rate of increase, for that California population, and that was, what was that number?
Well, roughly looking at their graph, from when Beckman established his population estimate in 2002 up to the increase in 2008, we estimated a lambda of 16%. Well, if you look at their graph, their estimates go up 15.7%.
Okay, so
almost identical.
Almost identical.
And again, as you said, that's not statistically accurate, but it's just one other indication that our estimates are in line and population is increasing.
Okay. And then I also note finally in Dr. Beckman's paper, which I'm not sure if everybody's had a chance to read, but I did get an opportunity to read it. That he is, obviously we have some areas that we need to continue to study, and I looked at this document, and I feel very strongly that all of the areas that Dr. Beckman has identified that need, continuing and further study, that this commission should urge the department to, further, do, and that coupled with the hunt. That I'm hoping, that this commission, decides to, continue. We'll provide additional data, that will further, increase our understanding of these populations and, these bears. But just seems to me that the bear population in California is just going, gangbusters, and we're having the spillover effects here in the state of Nevada.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, it's doing this just about everywhere black bears exist. All the estimates from different states, they're either stable or increasing. I'm not sure if there's any that show that they're decreasing, but I kind of doubt it. Black bear populations across North America are going up, and that's because, in part, conservation of the species. They're protected, meaning they're a protected game animal. Protected doesn't mean that they're preserved, not hunted. It simply means that if they're hunted, they're done so under managed regulations.
I guess just a follow-up question for Dr. Beckman. Dr. Beckman, how will the hunt help in the studying the bears and in this population? In other words, dealing with the influx of bears coming in from California, or basically maybe nailing that particular issue down. Could you talk about how that all fits together?
Yeah, so I'll address the question of the hunt in terms of how it will help us with the research. One of the things that we can use the data that are generated from bears that are hunted is the hunting season then essentially become a new recapture period. And so we had a conversation earlier, a couple minutes ago, about the number of tag bears that were in the harvested individuals at this point. And as Carl noted, no bears have been harvested that have been tagged. But over time, we should start to see tag bears showing up in that harvest. And so the harvest will allow us to basically have another recapture period each year. And so that'll help us to continually estimate the population size as we go through time, in addition to the research that we're doing. So that'll be additional information that can be used by the scientists and the managers to inform changes in population. And the harvest data can also be used to continue to build age structures and look at sex ratios. And those kind of pieces of information will be useful from the science perspective.
Okay, thank you. We have an additional question from Commissioner Robb.
Carl, for years we've managed the deer herds along the California border in cooperation with the state of California, looking at a proportionate number of deer that we can hunt on each side of the line. Are we currently doing that with black bear and say down, I see some of the takers down in the Pinuts and in the southern end? If we start seeing the harvest too heavy in those ends, and California has harvest too heavy in those ends, are we going to split the units in the future? Are we going to manage the resource in a way that we don't have an impact because of what California's doing, we're doing, will we manage that population together to stay our kind of together?
Well, possibly. We do have a signed MOU with California, meaning we can help them with management, diversity conditioning, and other things they can help us. So that's in place, that cooperative agreement is in place. We certainly could discuss those issues with them. I think some of the problems, and maybe John can better answer this, but I think some of the problems are associated with you're not dealing with a deer herd that has a known migration route, summer range, winter range, and kind of a more or less a set population, for lack of a better term, to give that herd of deer that we're managing cooperatively with them. Bears, on the other hand, your adult males, and in the home range, their migratory routes and everything else that the home range that they spend throughout the year, I think would be on such a large scale that it'd be really hard to quantify whether something California was doing on their side was having an impact on the Nevada side. I don't know if John has anything to add to that or not, but.
The only thing I would probably say is that obviously when you're hunting along a state boundary, the more communication between the two states is just going to increase the reliability of the information, and the information exchange will help, especially in Nevada, determine things like immigration rates from California into Nevada, which is something that we're currently interested in, and Carl alluded to earlier with the genetics component of our current study. And so, by having information exchange occurring between the two state agencies will just help us get a better handle on exactly what's happening with the population on both sides of the political boundary that's drawn down the middle of it.
Just as a follow-up, it would seem to me that another area that the state of California and the state of Nevada can get together on is, Dr. Beckman, in your paper you talk about how critical it is to basically deal with the, I guess the term that is used, the wildlife corridors between the two states to ensure that that the movement between the two states, because if that starts getting cut off, then this Nevada population of bears is going to be isolated, and that's probably not going to be a good thing. So could you maybe just comment on that particular issue?
Yeah, and Carl mentioned this a little bit earlier. We're currently, I'm co-advising a new PhD student that's going to be working on that exact issue, where we're going to be trying to use things that are a lot of advanced modeling techniques, and I'm not going to go into the science, but they're basically resource selection functions and circuit theory analyses to identify key movement areas, not only in the state of Nevada, but hopefully between California and Nevada. And once we have those models, that may help direct some efforts in identifying those areas that are going to be key to maintaining spaces and areas where bears can immigrate and emigrate between the two states. And so that's something that we continue to work on, and it's kind of the next phase in our ongoing research in the area.
And then obviously we need to get that information to the land use planner so we can avoid degradation of those areas and ensure the the bear habitat, because that seems to be critical bear habitat, what we're talking about.
Correct.
Commissioner Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure who to direct my question to, Carl, you or John, I'm not sure. John, in your dissertation, you had made conclusions, or you expressed concern in your paper that, I'll just read a portion of it. The increased prevalence of bears has been viewed as a population increase without recognition of the possibility that backcountry areas have been partially or mostly depopulated. So I guess my question is, considering the information that's been gathered over the last 10 years and the analysis, the additional analysis, where are we with regards to that thought, the depopulation of these wildland bears versus urban interface?
Yeah, so I'll address it. At one time, we had a redistribution, and bears were pulled down into these urban or front country areas. And what I think is occurring now is that we've kind of hit carrying capacity of those urban areas from the garbage resource. And I think that's one line of evidence for that is the number of complaints has been increasing, but we've, the last 5 or 6 years, we've averaged off at about 300 complaints. And so over time, as we get more urban areas, the number of complaints may go up as more bears are attracted to those areas. But I think what's happening now is with the increasing population, new bears that are immigrating into the region or being produced by females in Nevada are finding that the urban areas are probably at carrying capacity. And so as the population grows, the new bears added to the population, my hypothesis is that they are now backfilling in those once vacant home ranges in the backcountry region. So ultimately, if we, have these urban areas that are drawing bears down into those, but as the population's increasing, we have new bears backfilling into those vacated backcountry areas. That would be my hypothesis of what is happening right now, that we have estimated an increasing population, but yet we're really not seeing a tremendous jump in complaints over the last 5 years, but it is continuing to go up. So hopefully that's clear of kind of what my hypothesis is, but our current research should be able to continue to address that. And over time, we should be able to update, backcountry density estimates if that's something that, is deemed a necessary piece of information.
Okay, anybody else have a question for Carl or Dr. Beckman?
Mr. Chairman?
Go ahead, Matt.
Just for the record, Carl's presentation we'll put on the website so that anybody can access it and see all the data. Carl was putting the finishing touches on it as of yesterday, so we wanted to wait till it was complete and we'll make that available.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions from the commission for Carl and Dr. Beckman. Is Dr. Beckman going to be hanging up at this point in time, or is he?
That's up to you, John. Do you want to hang on or not?
If it's a benefit, I can definitely stay on the phone. So I will let the Board of Commissioners make the decision, or you, Carl. I'm willing to stay if it's beneficial.
Okay, well, yeah, if you're willing to stay, we'd love to have you as long as we can keep you. Okay, so why don't we move on to Maureen Hollinger. She's going to talk about the actual regulation structure.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I'm Maureen Hollinger from Nevada Department of Wildlife, and I'm the License Office Supervisor. I'm here to present LCB File R002-11, also known as Commission General Regulation 393, regarding the black bear hunt regulations. It's a regulation relating to wildlife, establishing provisions relating to the hunting of black bears, prohibiting a person from baiting a big game mammal or knowingly hunting a big game mammal that was baited by another person, prohibiting a person from selling, purchasing, bartering, or trading the gallbladder of the bear, and providing other matters properly relating thereto. The support material has the regulation, of course, in addition to another paper that I usually put together if I have to present language. It's it provides background and some of the statutory regulation authorities, and then I go through the sections as an overview instead of reading the regulation line by line. This came to my attention back in background back in June of 2010 when there was the initial discussion of a bear hunt, and that's where it relates to my world. As a licensed office supervisor, I oversee the application hunt program. So that's why the background starts in this document back in June of 2010 where it kind of came to my attention. Then at the August 10th, 2010 commission meeting, Carl presented a presentation on black bears at that time. At the September 2010 commission meeting, Carl and Larry Gilbertson, the chief of game division, presented another report on the season structure that they envisioned. And then the department at that time was directed to go forward with regulatory or changes to the Nevada Administrative Code, which is what you see before you today. At that time, it had to be developed as temporary regulation because they were leading into a legislative session. After the session, then we have to come back and look at it on a permanent basis. So at the December 2010 commission meeting, the commission approved the temporary regulation known at that time as CGR 393. The next section in the support material just identifies some of the regulatory and statutory regulations as it pertains to this document here today. This by no means encompasses all of the regulations or statute provisions. I'll go on to the language explanations. Sections 1 through 4 address changes to Nevada Administrative Code that would be new in regards to the bear hunt. And then I'll go into sections where there's amendments to current regulations. In subsection 1, it provides language regarding residents and non-residents, the ability to apply for a bear hunt should there be one established in annual regulation. That section also addresses application waiting periods for those persons applying for big game tags. The language is similar to what we have already on record for antelope hunts. If they take a bear, they have to sit out 5 years on applying. If they don't take a bear, they're eligible to apply the following year. In subsection 2, that's the section establishing the bear tag fees, which as presented today for the resident tag it's $100, and for the non-resident tag it would be $300. In subsections 3, that's the language that the sportsman is required to report the harvest and to present the skull and eye to the department for inspection, and that's where Carl in that inspection process is getting his data. Subsection 4 is in regards to if a person accidentally traps or kills a black bear, what they're supposed to do regulatorily in that regard. In subsection 5, that establishes the language in regards to if a person takes a female accompanied by a cub, and the definition of a black bear cub. Subsection 6 reiterates that provides the commission the authority to annually establish the quota, seasons, and management units and groups, and stipulations on the season quota in regards to the harvest of the bears. And then in subsection 7, this is establishing the toll-free number in regulation for the public to call to keep the public informed, or the sportsmen in the field informed as to whether the season is open or closed. So if the harvest objective is reached, then the season would be closed, and so there need to be kept informed. And then also has requirements for the department to notify the sportsman regarding that season open and closure. So once that's closed. The remaining sections amend current regulation. Section 2 is amends the established language to include a black bear in the list of species that restricts a person to obtaining only one tag unless otherwise specified by the commission. If they decided to change that, it would be established in the annual regulation. But that makes it so they're only allowed to obtain one tag. In section 3, it amends the established language to include black bear as one of the species for which an unsuccessful applicant can be awarded a bonus point. In our big game application process, we have a bonus point program that affords a better opportunity to draw a tag. This language, adding it in there, would include black bear as one of those species that would be included in the bonus point program. Section 4 amends the established language regarding the bonus point program to include the black bear species as a category to earn bonus points. Try not to knock the microphone off here, sorry. Sections 5 through 8 are changes to chapters 503 and 504 in Nevada Administrative Code, amending current language there. Section 5 is new language to the chapter, and it's in regards to baiting big game mammals. It's not restricted to just black bears. It's in regards to baiting big game mammals and the definition of bait. Section 6 amends the established language to include black bear regarding the use of dogs during an open season in hunting, and then also clarifies the authority under which black bear or mountain lion can be hunted, chased, or pursued with dogs. And then Section 7 amends established language regarding the non-edible parts of game animals. It adds language regarding gallbladders and any species of black bear in the possession of more than 2 gallbladders. This takes into account that if there's a hunter that has a tag in California and in Nevada, that they're not in violation of having, if they had 2 gallbladders in possession. And then lastly, Section 8 just adds bear to the management unit area boundaries, and that takes up about 15 pages. So, okay, and that's just my presentation on the language. Is there any questions? I'll turn it back to the commission in regards to some of that language.
Okay, commissioners have a question on the language. We've obviously dealt with it before. I think we hashed out a lot of issues back last time we saw the regulation. Anybody have any comments? Commissioner Rain?
Thank you. An issue actually was brought up by a person in Berteg asking about the current regulation does not allow for a guide to take the class beforehand, and then instead of the actual hunter if there's some problem. And we have similar regulation for like bighorn sheep, or perhaps the guide can take class, but then the hunter has to be present with the guide at all times. Why can't we incorporate that into this? Should we, shouldn't we?
When the indoctrination or the indoctrination class was brought forward to the commission, originally it was non-mandatory at that time. It was just to be an informative class for the hunter before they go out in the field. At the commission meeting at that time, it was changed to a mandatory class, so there was no opportunity to incorporate some of those things at that time that we have for sheep in permanent regulation. And this was already established as a temporary regulation for the change to NEC, and we could go forward in the future and add that language in if it continues to be a mandatory class. Or you could do that at the annual regulation.
How difficult would it be to exactly mirror the sheep language in this regulation? I mean, at this point in time, should that be a...
I would, I can't speak for the Legislative Council Bureau because in July they took the temporary regulation and reviewed it at that time and put it into this format that you see before you today. So I don't know. I can't speak for the Legislative Council. I think they accept small changes versus additional lengthy changes.
And is there an opinion as whether or not that would be a large change, or is that
I can't speak for the legislative council.
I guess my preference would be is to why we leave it alone, and what way I'm thinking is that, one, hasn't the indoctrination class already occurred? There's not gonna be any other indoctrination class for this year, right? Okay, and so, assuming we have a hunt next year, then, if we can address it at, the season setting, when we're dealing with the regulations at that time, can we do it then?
I think you can, you have the authority to do that. Yes.
Okay, so.
Mr. Chairman, Ken Mayer for the record. In fact, there's some other changes we'd like to do for the general other hunts that have these orientations. I would propose, if this becomes a permanent regulation, include this with others and make one proposal to change.
Okay, yeah, that would be my preference. Well, I don't think there's any rush to do it. I think we have plenty of opportunity to make any changes. Okay. Any other commissioners with a question for Maureen on the regulation language?
Chairman,
Commissioner Howell?
Maureen, at the present time, the guy that draws a tag, he must take this mandatory class. Now, if he hires a guide, does the guide also have to take the mandatory class?
The regulation just states that there's a mandatory class, and it was for the tag holders. So,
The answer is no.
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any further commission questions for Maureen? Okay, seeing none, thank you, Maureen. Okay, we need to bring this back to the commission for any discussion of what we've seen so far, or is everybody pretty good to go? Okay, I think the next item is I'm going to go ahead and take this out to the. Should we do the cabs first? Mr. Mayor, would you like to do comments from the cabs first or public first?
I think let's do the cabs first, and then open up.
So why don't we get cab comment first, and so if any cabs have a comment with regard to the regulation, the permanent regulation, please come forward. Mr. Wellington?
Thank you again. For the record, Ken Wellington, Elko County. A couple things. We had at our CAB meeting, we've held, I think, five times this has been on our posted agenda, and not once have we received a letter in opposition of this hunt. However, we have received several in support of it. I'm afraid that some of these groups, what they've done is they're bypassing the process by coming straight to you, and that was something we're pretty firm about, running these things back to the cabs, at least giving the public and the sportsmen within the area the comment on that. Next, I'd just like to say that we had comments about removing the meat. They wanted to assure that the meat was going to be removed from the bear, not left. There was discussions, and I think there's public that are going to speak on behalf of the houndsmen for pursuit. Nevada Outfitters and Guides Association, I don't see anybody here, but they had asked me to speak from our meeting, said that they did support this. There was also comments about having multiple classes, not just one, and redistribution of the tags if it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to make a quick comment to your comments. I can assure you that in Clark County we've had participation from the public, with respect to this bear issue, and we've received a lot of input from the public on the issue. And I believe Washington had the same experience. Mr. Yanni?
For the record, Gil Yanni, Carson Advisory Board at our meeting. We had received quite a few emails, both for and against the bear hunt becoming a permanent regulation. They were all read into the record, or became part of the record. They were too voluminous to read at the meeting. At the meeting, the vote on support the permanent bear hunt regulation was unanimous.
Thank you.
For the record, Rex Flowers, Washoe County CAB. At our meeting, we voted unanimously against this permanent regulation. We've had a lot of input, public-wise, and most of it has been against the hunt. However, again, we based our decision on the materials given to us by Ann Dow and the science behind those materials.
Thank you.
Craig Burnside, Douglas Cab. We're either, I guess, blessed or cursed to probably have the highest population of bears in our county. We had received quite a few emails, both positive and negative. We had some excellent public comment at our meeting, both for and against. And I know you're not inciting us today, but we did vote to advise you guys to please make this a permanent one.
Janae?
Jim Janae, Lyon County CAB. We had numerous, I won't say numerous compared to the rest, but we had quite a few letters and emails on this, both pro and con. I kind of had them weighed out. The one thing that our discussion kind of went to was, this is regulations for a permanent bear hunt. It is not saying we're going to have a bear hunt every year. It brings it up and puts it into a perspective with the rest of the game in the state of Nevada, where we sit down as a commission and decide where we stand. I have been active in these game board meetings and so on. Probably the only one longer is Glenn Bunch. And during this time, you know, we did not get into bears that much. Yes, Nevada Fish and Game was responsible for it. But we did not discuss them. We did not get into anything until the hunt started. And now we're getting input. We're doing things for the bears that need to be done. And so Lyon County decided that we are definitely in favor of permanent regulation. Thank you.
Joe Krim, Persian Cab. Our meeting was kind of late, so we didn't get our comments into you guys in time, still be late. But we supported the department's recommendations in making a fair hunt permanent.
Thank you. Harris?
Paul Harris, Clark County CAB. And as you already mentioned, Chairman, we did have quite a bit of input at our meetings, and we also had this agenda item on many times. And in the end, the Clark County CAB fully supports the Wildlife Commission in making the bear hunt permanent and using hunting and other wildlife management tools as a way to manage and grow the population of black bear in the state of Nevada.
Okay, do we have any further CAB input with regard to the issues that we've discussed so far on CGR 393? Okay, seeing none, we'll bring back the commission, and I want to just say before we go forward with public comment, I want to lay down some ground rules. Just one second. Okay, I assume that we're going to have a lot of public comment, and so we need to obviously keep things moving. And I've already given my discussion with respect to maintaining the decorum in this room, and everybody, staying under control, and let's don't get out of hand. So far, I'm very happy. Everything is going very smoothly. In our public comment, we have some ground rules, and then those are that you have 3 minutes. And so Vice Chairman Rob is going to man the clock. He's already. And I believe, at what point, 15 seconds?
At 15 seconds, I will note that it is 15 seconds left.
Okay. And in addition, one of the things that we've done in the past, we have allowed organizations that represent numerous people to have 6 minutes instead of 3. And so that means that no bear hunt can have, so I don't know if that's Catherine or if that's Christine, but we're going to go ahead and recognize you for 6 minutes. And then I don't know if there's any other organizations that are present, but I guess in fairness, we would also extend that to them as well. So anyway, why don't we go ahead and get started on public comment, and you want to go ahead and read the first name?
Elaine Carey.
Chairman Macbeth, before I start my 3 minutes, thank you. I'd like to say that we had asked for all information that was going to be presented at this meeting to be given to us, and we were not given the information that from Carl Lackey's report, and we would have, I assume that's the protocol, we would have appreciated to have that. And also, we just found out now that we have 6 minutes to speak, and most of us were trying to get it within the 3 minutes, so we would have liked to amend that also.
Okay, let me, first of all, let me just reiterate. The 6 minute applies to the organization, so it's not everybody.
I am speaking for the organization.
Which?
No Bear Hunt Nevada.
Okay, just so you understand though, if you're the one that's the official speaker for No Bear Hunt Nevada, then that's it, one time.
One time. All right, well then I will not take that, I will leave that to our attorney.
Right.
However, I would just like to say, since Mr. Lackey had that much time, there are several of us that are refuting some of the interpretation and the conclusions of that information. And to do that in 3 minutes is just about impossible. Now, a lot of you have been given papers of...
Okay. Let me just stop you right there.
All right.
Because on the information that Mr. Lackey brought, that information had not been distributed to any commission members. So that information came to both the commission and the public at the same time. And I believe under the open meeting law, that is okay. Mr. Lackey was working on his presentation up until yesterday, and so pulling everything together. And the same thing with Dr. Beckman and his report that came in yesterday as well. And so again, didn't get distributed to anybody else other than me. And that particular, I did not get Mr. Lackey's presentation at all. So anyway, so. I believe under the open meeting law, we're good there, and obviously you'll have the time, to deal with it in this comment, and then you can also have time tomorrow when it comes back forth. If you do have any additional issues, you can bring them up in your public comment with respect to the action item, which will be tomorrow.
It's just 3 minutes is a little bit tight. I would like 3.5 minutes if I can have that.
Well, we're going to hold everybody to 3. That's how we're going to do it. So please keep it. Please keep it at 3. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Carrick from Reno, Nevada. I'm a member of No Bear Hunt Nevada. I oppose making the bear hunt permanent based on the scientific reports and evidence presented by the National Sierra Club, Dr. Rick Hopkins, and Big Wildlife. The Sierra Club Committee is comprised of wildlife and conservation biologists, professors, researchers, and other wildlife experts. Our organization submitted to these organizations for review, these 3 independent groups, all background materials that NDOW had, including reports from 1998 to the present on the black bear population. A lot of that information was what Mr. Lackey had presented today. These groups came to the same conclusion. Nevada's black bear population is not large enough to sustain a hunt, and a hunt can negatively affect the population in the coming years. This particular information was from a study done in Wisconsin where the bear population subjected to hunting declined by almost 40% in 7 years. Details on page 7 of my letter. The following are some conclusions that these biologists in the National Sierra Club submitted, which you have a copy of the letter. The Nevada Department of Wildlife did not satisfactorily meet the burden of proof that an annual bear hunt is sustainable. There is no reliable statistics regarding the current size of the population. NDOW's website had said there is currently between 200 to 300 black bears in Nevada. In research done by Carl Lackey in December 2004, it states the bear population was 150 to 300. This upper limit was